Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. I hope you all had a good day and are ready to listen to some stories to wind down and fall asleep to. Before the video begins, please drop a like and subscribe if you aren't already. It really helps the channel and I would really appreciate it. Comment below where you are watching this video from, I would love to know. Alright, turn off the lights and get ready for some horror stories. That summer sticks in my head more than any other. I was about 13, maybe 14, and like always it was me, my buddy Tyler, and his little brother Jake. We didn't really have much to do except ride bikes, sneak snacks from the gas station, and hang out in the woods behind Tyler's house. There was this clearing we'd go to, what we called the old campground. It wasn't really a campground, just a beat-up spot with a fire pit and some rotting picnic tables that probably hadn't been used in years. We'd waste whole afternoons there, daring each other to climb trees or wander deeper into the woods. One day, we got there and saw something new, a tent. Not like a shiny new one from Walmart, but this grimy canvas thing, stained and sagging. It didn't look abandoned either. It looked like somebody had actually been staying in it. Jake wanted to leave right away, said we shouldn't mess with it. But Tyler was curious. He was always the one who wanted to push it further. We walked over, and the flap was open just enough that you could see inside. There wasn't much, just dirt, an old blanket, and in the corner, a pile of little animal bones. Like rabbits or squirrels. They were laid out in this weird spiral pattern. I thought it was creepy, but Tyler laughed and said it was probably just some wannabe weirdo trying to scare people off. Still, he looked uneasy when he crawled out. None of us talked much on the bike ride home. The next day, Tyler wanted to go back. He said we'd prove it was just some messed up prank. I didn't want to, but he kept pushing, so we dragged Jake along. When we got there, the tent was gone. Just gone. There was a flat patch of dirt where it had been, like it had sat there for a while, but everything was packed up. We were about to leave when Jake pointed to a tree near the edge of the clearing. Hanging from one of the branches was a dead crow. Someone had tied its wings open with string. And carved into the dirt underneath was the same spiral pattern as before. That was the first time I remember feeling real fear. Not the kind you get from a scary movie, but the kind that makes your stomach sink because you know this is actually happening in front of you. We bolted out of there and didn't stop until we were back in Tyler's driveway. We all agreed not to tell our parents because, honestly, what would we even say? Some creep is hanging dead birds in the woods? They would have laughed or told us to stay out of the forest. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every little sound outside made me jump. Around 1 in the morning, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Tyler, I think someone's in the yard. I called him right away, but he didn't pick up. The next day, I biked to his house. His mom told me Tyler and Jake had gone to stay with their dad for a while. She didn't say why. When Tyler finally came back 2 weeks later, he wasn't the same. He was quieter, more serious. He wouldn't talk about what happened, no matter how many times I asked. Jake didn't even look at me. We never went back to the clearing again. And by the end of the summer, we weren't hanging out like we used to. Here's the thing though, the woods aren't far from where we live. Anyone could have been out there, someone homeless, some weirdo doing who knows what, maybe even somebody dangerous. The bones, the crow, the spiral, it wasn't ghosts or monsters. It was just some person who decided to do that. And honestly, that's what makes it worse. Because people like that, they're real. The summer I turned 15, I thought it was going to be the best one of my life. School had just ended, my parents were both working long hours, and I had way more freedom than usual. Most days I hung out with my best friend Matt and his cousin Eric, who was staying with him for a couple months. We spent almost every day outside, riding around town on our bikes, walking down to the creek, sneaking into the gas station to buy energy drinks. It was the kind of summer where the air feels thick and time moves slow. About halfway through July, Matt suggested we start exploring the old rail yard on the edge of town. It had been shut down for years, all the tracks rusted and overgrown, but the place was huge, rows of broken freight cars, empty storage sheds, and piles of scrap. Parents always told us to stay away because it wasn't safe, but that just made us want to go even more. The first time we went, it was just exciting. We climbed through busted train cars, found old spray-painted graffiti, and joked about setting up a base there. But the second time we went, something felt different. In one of the sheds, tucked in the back behind stacks of rotting wood, we found a sleeping bag and some clothes. At first we thought it was just trash left behind, but then we noticed the food wrappers and water bottles. Whoever was using that shed hadn't been gone long. Eric immediately wanted to leave, but Matt insisted it was fine. Probably just a homeless guy, he said. If we come during the day, he won't even be here. I didn't love the idea, but I went along with it. A couple days later we came back, and this time, the sleeping bag was rolled up neatly. On top of it was a single shoe, a dirty old sneaker. Next to it, scratched into the wall, was a set of tally marks, like someone keeping count. There were dozens of them. That unsettled me, but Matt tried to play it off, saying it was just some crazy guy marking days. Eric kept saying we should stop coming back, but Matt dared him to be less of a baby, and neither of us wanted to look scared. Over the next week, little things started happening. Once, we found a half-eaten apple left on top of the train car we'd climbed the day before. Another time, we swore we heard someone walking through the gravel behind us, but when we turned, no one was there. The worst was when we found one of Matt's bike gloves hanging from a nail on the shed door. He'd dropped it days earlier, and we'd given up looking for it. Someone had taken the time to pick it up and hang it there for us to find. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever was staying there knew we'd been poking around, and now they were watching us. We didn't go back for a week. But eventually, Matt convinced us again. He said we'd just take one last trip, grab a few pictures, and then never go back. Against my better judgment, I agreed. It was late afternoon when we biked over. The air felt heavy, like a storm was coming. When we got to the shed, the sleeping bag was gone. So were the clothes and wrappers. For a second I thought maybe we were safe, that whoever had been there had moved on. But then Eric noticed something. On the wall, next to the old tally marks, there was a new set. Only this time, instead of neat rows, it was 3 tallies spaced apart. 3. Like he was counting us. We left in silence, none of us talking until we hit the road again. Matt tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. Eric said he wasn't going back no matter what, and for once I agreed with him. That night, I was lying in bed, still replaying everything in my head, when my phone buzzed. It was a picture message from an unknown number. The photo was grainy and dark, but I knew what it was. It was my bike, leaned up against the side of my house, exactly where I'd left it. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I told my parents everything, even though I knew they'd be pissed. They called the cops, but by the time they went out to the rail yard, the shed was completely empty. No sleeping bag, no clothes, no marks on the wall. Nothing. The cops told us we were probably exaggerating, that it was just some drifter passing through. They never found anyone. Matt still jokes about it sometimes, but I can tell it bothers him too. Eric flat out refuses to even mention it. And me? I don't ride past the rail yard anymore. Because here's the thing, I know what I saw, and I know that picture came from someone who was close enough to touch my bike without me hearing a thing. That's not a ghost story. That's real. And that's what keeps me up at night. You ever have something happen when you're a kid that doesn't feel like much at the time, but later on you realize how wrong it was? That's how I feel about what happened the summer I was 13. I used to spend most days at my friend Jordan's place, because his parents didn't really care what we did. He lived a couple streets over from this old overpass where train tracks used to run, and underneath it was this big, cracked stretch of pavement people rarely went to. It had spray paint all over the concrete walls, broken bottles in the weeds, exactly the kind of place kids like to hang out because no adults ever came around. We'd ride our bikes there, sit on the curb, drink sodas, and just talk. One afternoon, when the heat was unbearable, we noticed a cooler sitting in the shade under the bridge. Not like a little lunchbox cooler, one of those big ones you take to a tailgate. Jordan wanted to check it out, but I hesitated. I figured it belonged to some construction guy or someone who came back there to drink. Still, curiosity won. He popped it open, and inside was a bunch of bottled water, some sandwiches wrapped in foil, and a pack of cigarettes. Looked like somebody's stash. We thought it was kind of funny until we noticed the cigarettes weren't in a regular box. They were in a clear plastic bag with a name written on it in black marker. We didn't recognize the name. We closed the lid quick and decided not to mess with it. But over the next week, every time we went back, that cooler was there. Sometimes it was in the same spot, sometimes moved a little, but always stocked with different stuff. Once it had granola bars. Another time, a stack of gas station burritos. Always fresh. The weirdest part was the notebooks. One day there was a spiral notebook on top of the food, and the first couple pages were full of names. Dozens of them, written in neat rows. None of them were people we knew. We argued about what it meant. Jordan thought it was just a homeless guy keeping track of who gave him stuff. I wasn't so sure. The names looked too deliberate, like a list. The last time we went there, we didn't see the cooler right away. But then, leaning against the concrete wall, was one of the notebooks. Open, like it was left there on purpose. And on the last line of the page, underneath all the other names, was mine. Not Jordan's. Not anyone else's. Just mine, in the same handwriting as the rest. I don't even remember what excuse we made to leave, but we never went back to that bridge again. I told myself it was some stupid prank, that Jordan probably wrote my name in there to freak me out. But any time I brought it up, he swore he didn't. To this day, I don't know who was using that cooler, or why they had that list of names. But sometimes I think about the fact that whoever wrote them knew mine. And I wish I'd never opened it in the first place. The summer I was 12, my parents sent me to stay with my aunt for a couple of weeks. She lived in a small town that was way quieter than where I was from. It wasn't bad, there was a lake down the road, a convenience store within biking distance, and a couple kids my age who lived on the same street. One of them was Nick, this skinny kid with messy blonde hair who was always barefoot. The other was his cousin, Riley, who was a year older than us. We clicked right away, and most days we'd hang out by the lake or ride bikes around town until it got dark. There wasn't a whole lot to do there, so we started exploring. Down past the lake was this long dirt road that led to a field and some woods. Halfway down that road sat this old, falling apart house. Windows boarded up, roof sagging, grass up to your knees all around it. Nick told me everyone called it the Miller place. Supposedly some family used to live there but packed up one night and never came back. Of course, we decided we had to check it out. The first time we went, it was just daylight wandering. The front door was chained shut, but a window in the back had one of the boards loose, so Riley pried it off, and we climbed inside. The air smelled like mildew and dust. Most of the rooms were empty except for broken furniture and trash, but in the kitchen there were piles of old cans stacked in the corner, rusted and swollen. We thought it was cool until we noticed footprints in the dust. They weren't ours, either. They were older but clear, like someone had been walking around inside not too long ago. That should have been enough to make us leave it alone, but of course it wasn't. We kept going back every couple of days, daring each other to stay in there longer. The second time, we found a mattress in one of the upstairs rooms, like someone had dragged it there. The third time, there was food, half a loaf of bread, a can opener, and a water bottle. That's when it really sank in that somebody was living there. Riley wanted to tell his mom, but Nick talked him out of it. He said if we told, the cops would run whoever it was out, and then we'd never get to go back inside. I didn't say anything, but deep down, the idea of some stranger hiding out in that house made me nervous. One afternoon we went back, and there was something new. On the wall by the staircase, written in marker, was a message. Get out. The letters were big and messy, like someone had written them in a hurry. We laughed about it at first, tried to act tough, but we didn't go upstairs that day. We just sat in the living room, joking around, until Nick froze and said he heard something. At first I didn't hear it, but then I caught it too. Slow footsteps, above us, moving across the floorboards. We bolted. We didn't even bother putting the board back on the window, we just dove through it and sprinted all the way back to the road. None of us said anything until we were back at the lake, out of breath. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Somebody had been up there the whole time, probably listening to us. The next day, we swore we weren't going back. But of course, by the weekend, we did. We wanted proof. Riley brought an old disposable camera his mom had lying around. The plan was to sneak in, take pictures, and get out. When we got there, the window we always used was nailed shut. Someone had hammered the board back in place, this time with fresh nails. But that wasn't the worst part. On the ground outside the window, stuck into the dirt with a nail, was a piece of paper. It said, "I see you." That was it. Just those 3 words in the same messy marker writing. We never went back after that. Riley tore up the paper and threw it in the lake, and we swore not to tell anyone because we didn't want our parents flipping out. I went home a week later, but for the rest of that summer, every time I walked past a window at night, I imagined someone standing in the dark on the other side, watching. And the worst part? That old Miller house is still standing. Every time I visit my aunt, I see it at the end of that road, boards rotting, weeds swallowing it up. I've never told her what happened. But sometimes I wonder if whoever was in there ever left. When I think back on being a kid, most summers blur together. Long days, bikes, swimming, late nights. But there's one summer memory that stuck in my head for all the wrong reasons. I was staying at my cousin Ben's place out in the country. He lived in one of those areas where the nearest gas station was 10 minutes by car, and if you wanted to go anywhere, you rode a bike down dirt roads. We had a lot of freedom, which meant a lot of boredom too. One afternoon we were exploring a stretch of road that cut through the woods, and we came across this driveway we'd never noticed before. It was long, gravel, half overgrown with weeds. At the end of it was a trailer, old, beat up, all the windows covered with sheets instead of blinds. No cars in sight. We stopped at the edge of the driveway, not sure if anyone actually lived there. Just as we were about to leave, Ben pointed out something in the ditch, a bunch of old backpacks, piled up like trash. Some were faded and ripped, but a couple looked pretty new. We climbed down to check them out. Inside one was a stack of school notebooks, the kind you'd use in middle school. Another had clothes stuffed in it, like someone had packed for a trip. None of it looked like garbage. It looked like stuff people had actually been using. That was enough to creep me out. I told Ben we should head back, but he said we ought to at least peek at the trailer. We didn't go all the way up, just far enough that we could see the front steps. And sitting right there on the porch was a pair of shoes. Muddy, but lined up neatly, like someone had just taken them off. We got out of there quick. The next day, curiosity got the better of us and we went back. This time, the backpacks in the ditch were gone. Every single one. And on the ground where they'd been, there was a single notebook left open, pages fluttering in the breeze. We didn't go close enough to read what was written inside. We just stared at it for a minute, then turned around. That night, I woke up to the sound of a car slowly driving past Ben's house. Not unusual by itself, but when I peeked through the blinds, I saw it crawl by real slow, like the driver was looking at each house. I couldn't make out the car well, just that it was old and loud. The next morning, Ben swore he saw the same car parked at the end of his road when he biked into town. When he looked again an hour later, it was gone. We never went back to that trailer. Not once. Even now, I still wonder about those backpacks. Who they belonged to. Why they were dumped and then taken away. I've never asked my cousin if he still sees that car out there, but sometimes I think about those shoes on the porch and how they looked ready to be slipped on again.